episode number 51. I have the privilege to sit down with Mike Penchina, FDNY, fireman, 21 years. Wait till you hear what his favorite seat position was on the truck. It's pretty cool. Anyway, don't forget, these episodes are brought to you by Old Man Copper, Smoke Eater, Mustache Wax. Smells like a freaking house fire. Keeps you thinking about jobs all day long. Discount code COPPER, COPPER, saves you 10%. Don't forget about our boys, Hasgard, the best freaking gear bag in the world. Arizona Firemen, can't beat these guys. Hasgard, check out their bags. Discount code COPPER, COPPER, will save you 10% on the best gear bag. Check these guys out. We just auctioned one off. They're one of the men. Stay tuned. Enjoy it. Off to you, Mr. Mike. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I have the privilege to sit down with the old salty dog today. Michael Penchina. He was FDNY, retired 1991. So he started his career 1963 as a volley with Alert Fire Department in Great Neck, New York. November 1969, he was appointed to Proby School. January 1970, assigned to Engine 91. A year later, 1971, a year later, he transferred to ladder or truck 26-2. 3 years later, that truck was disbanded and he went to Engine 54. 1975, transferred back to the original ladder 26, truck 26, and retired. This is the key, retired as a backstep fireman in 1991 from the FDNY. So, thank you, sir. Our privilege, our honor to have you on the episode. Thank you so much for taking time out of your morning. Is there anything I butchered or is there anything you'd like to add to your bio, sir?
No, sounds good to me. I'm impressed.
You wrote it, so yeah, I hope so. So, all that said, you were in some of the busiest times in the FDNY, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I know the Warriors were basically the late 60s into the 70s, and I've talked to a couple of old timers. I know they carried into the 80s. So just your experience in that era of the fire service, was that the Warriors to start off with? Just to tell the audience, because most of our listeners are West Coast guys, so we love when we get to get the old salty guys, especially from FDNY, on the show, just to spit a little bit of knowledge. So what was the culture and what was the atmosphere like in that time in the FDNY in literally 1970?
It definitely was the war years. I went on at 69, but it probably started a little bit before there, a year or two before that, because when I went on, they were hiring guys every 2 months. They were hiring. Then we had classes of 200 firefighters.
Holy cow!
So that's why I got lucky, because otherwise you get stuck on that list, civil service list, for years. But the city was starting to burn, and they were burning Brooklyn and the Bronx and Manhattan. So they needed more firefighters. So I would say maybe it started 67, 68, somewhere around there when the war started, let's say. It reached its peak to the 70s when it was nuts. It was, for lack of a better word, it was great if you like to go to fires. And then in the 80s, it was still lots of fires, but they started tapering off because I think there was probably not too much left to burn, or starting to figure out that a lot of this stuff wasn't doing anybody any good. So that's the Warriors, my interpretation of the Warriors.
I'm so jealous to start with, but so 1969, you were just talking real quick. You're saying they were hiring classes of 200 to 500 guys. How long was Proby School at that time when you went through?
I think it was just 6 weeks. Each class was 200. There were 200 in the class, but we were 1, 2, 3. I think it was 6 weeks. If it was more than it could have been more than 8 weeks, because they run it through. They teach us all the basics, everything: engine work, truck work, first aid, knots. Everything you're required to do in the job. And they even told us what you're learning here is just the basics. you learn everything once you get assigned to a company, you learn the rest. That's the only way you're going to really learn is going to work at the fire ground. Yeah, and in those days you learn right away. A couple of weeks, you knew what you were pretty good. You were experienced already, so it was hectic.
That was I'll tell you what, it's good because exactly what you said is something that I know you retired in 1991, so it is how many years later we are still kind of going through the same heartache when we're hiring across the American Fire Service right now a lot because there's a lot of attrition. There's more jobs than there ever was, and there's a lot of people that don't want to do this job anymore. Unfortunately, you hit the nail on the head. It's like the academy or the Proby School. Man, you're touching the basics, and we tell guys, hey, you're going to learn just enough to get yourself in trouble. You're really going to learn the job, like what Mike was saying. When you get to the truck, get to the wagon, get to the engine, get underneath that suppression officer and that senior fireman and actually learn the job. We have guys today, for some reason, granted, rookie school, Proby school, the academy, whatever you call it in our region, our area right now is 14 to 16 weeks. And that's still not enough time, just to be honest. But guys are expecting kids to come out of the academy and they're dialed, like they're 20-year guys. But my kid on the head, you don't learn the job till you actually start doing it. And that was in the 70s, and we're having the same issue in 2026 now. So we talk about it. It's that ever flow of the fire service. So, Mike, I saw you got assigned to engine 91 in 1970, and then a year later, you went right to ladder. So is that something you really wanted to do? Like from the get-go, you're like, hey, man, from Proby school on, I want to be a truck ladder guy? Or was that just a spot open and you fell in love with it? If you don't mind kind of going down your journey of engine or ladder.
No, I always wanted to go to the ladder.
Yeah.
That was I think was my goal. A lot of these guys in my Proby class, they had connections. So they didn't come around anyway and ask you where do you want to work. You just go to sleep at night and say, wow, I hope I get assigned to a truck. But a lot of those guys, turns out later on, became heavy hitters in the fire department. Now, I don't know, when you're in Proby class, everybody's the same. But maybe a lot of them did have their connections, so they went to ladder companies right away. A lot of them went to engines because maybe their fathers worked there or their uncles, stuff like that. But I always wanted to be in the truck. So just before I forget, from my Proby class, two guys from my Proby class became fire commissioners. So,
Really?
Yeah.
You had at least two really big heavy hitters in your academy class. You were saying that, like, hey, a lot of guys in your Proby class had connections. Did you have anybody on the job, any family members, cousins, uncles, anything like that at the time? Or was it just you and like you said, you're just hoping for a good assignment?
No, I was just a green kid from Long Island, and I didn't know anybody, and a lot of these guys had relatives, so on the jobs, so they knew what to expect, what not to expect. I had only known a little bit because there was a guy in my Valley fire department who was a New York FDNY firefighter, and prior to being in Proby class, we'd go and visit him and hang out there for a few hours every night. And he was at a ladder company, and I always liked the truck work. I knew from the volleys the difference between the engines are the ones that are putting the fires out. And when I was in the volleys, you'd get the line more often, and you would put out a lot of fires because you got to be aggressive. Sometimes you got to fight just to get the nozzle. But once you get on a job in the city, you're not getting the nozzle unless you're the senior man. And in those days, it was tough. If you were a junior man, you're not getting a nozzle. The only time they give you the nozzle is when you're overhauling, and they let you, good. You wash it down. The other guys are out in the hallway taking a break. So,
Probably smoking cigarettes in the hallway, right? Freaking while you're cooling everything down.
Yeah, smoking. And I couldn't understand how they could do it. You just got to, breathing all that smoke in, and then they got all smoking cigarettes. It's crazy. But to this day, I still don't know how they did it.
That's crazy. So in the system that I work in right now, the probies, the booters we call them, so probationary firemen after they get out of the academy, if they're on their engine rotation, because they do 2 engine rotations and 1 ladder rotation in the department I work for, and then they get assigned as a rover in one of those houses. But with all that said, and it's funny because it's the opposite. We put the newest guy on the knob, which never made sense to me because they really don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're seeing. They're following orders, if you're lucky, telling them to open the bail, not to shut it off, move through, push, whatever the case might be. But I've said it from the beginning, like our brand new guys, they should be backing up the nozzlemen, and the nozzlemen's literally educating them on the job in that field classroom as he's knocking down fire, progressing, kind of talking through the motions. Because we have the manpower, and you guys did too. But I would prefer how you guys ran it, where then it's a fight for the knob, and the senior man's got it, and you're lucky if you get it because that's one of those prime spots. So you started on the engine. I know you wanted to be on the ladder. You got assigned a year later to ladder 26-2. Spent 3 years there and then disbanded it. So what's the story behind that? Was that part of when the city was broke? Because I know at some point, and I'm not sure if you worked during that time, they were doing layoffs. Was that part of your era in the FDNY, sir?
I think it was about 74, 75. They had a money problems in the city. So they started closing down, like 262, that was always referred to as second section. And there was a lot of companies like that throughout the job. In the Bronx, they had a few ladder trucks, which had 2 sections, and a bunch of engines with 2 sections. You had that in Brooklyn, a lot of 2-section engines. So actually 91 had 2 sections also. It's coming back, 91, 91, 2. So I went to 91, which was there, forever. Whenever they formed the companies. And then 91 2 came in when it started getting very busy. And the reason that they had the 2 sections like that for those companies, because you'd go out to one fire, and then 5 minutes later there would be another job. And they just didn't have all these companies nearby, so they made these second sections. And
with those second sections, would they trade calls as they came in? So first call 91 got it, second call 91-2 got it. If it was a job in your due, though, your first due, did you both go, or did you have to split that and keep one in the house?
Yes, how it worked. Every night, you were either 26 or 91 2. You'd be first up. So every box came in, and you would go out. The engine or the truck that was first up would go out. And then they would be the first to do companies. Then if there was another box came in, then the second up would go out. So it would be 91-2 would go out, and in this case, 262 would go out. In those days when it was busy like that, the boxes would come in one right after the other. So you would go out. Let's say the first section would go out on a run because they were first due. And then 5 minutes later, around the corner, the box get pulled. So the other company would go out. Except if there was first due. If it was first due engine or first due truck, both companies would go out. Am I clear? Does it make sense that they would?
No, it does. So yeah. First in, you would dump the house. Everybody goes. Everything else you would trade. And it was just there's so many fires, no one cared, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey, he's got a job, but 5 minutes later we're going to be running a job. It's probably going to be better or bigger.
But in the way New York is set up is, and it's probably like that out here too. Well, we'll get to that later. But in the case of the truck, first due truck has a different assignment than second due truck. Okay, so the first due truck, first engine, of course, both go to the fire floor. Okay, so if you're second due, you go to the floor above. The engine case, the second line probably goes to the fire floor also, and then third line goes to the floor above. I mean, I believe that's how it goes. With engine work, truck work, I know how that's how that goes. So but when you went out, both trucks went out. Truck who was first up that line takes a position of fire floor. Then the second truck goes to the floor above. Now the following night, now you reverse roles. So now you go to the 5th floor. But you see, we were a well-oiled machine at that time. It was, we knew just what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and it worked great. And I would imagine it worked like that in Brooklyn and the Bronx too, the same way with all those companies. But getting back to 1975, so they disbanded. All those second sections.
All of them. Okay.
They disbanded them because they needed money. So that's why I didn't know anybody, so I got sent down to 54 engine. All the other guys went to truck companies. You know, we had the companies in those days all had 25 men. I don't know.
Wow.
Okay, all those companies.
Were you running 6 or 5 on that ladder at the time during those?
One point it was 6. We would have 6 men plus an officer.
Six men plus an officer.
Yes. Yeah.
Whew.
So,
wow. Okay.
All right.
You got areas in the country they don't get that staffing on a full working assignment. You know, here we do, but there's some areas of the country, Mississippi, for example, you're lucky to get 7 guys out of 7 pieces of apparatus that show up. That's amazing.
You got to remember, one law assignment is more than you get with the entire department. That's see, I hang out a lot there with these guys from Goodyear, and we go over a lot of these things together, and you know, we joke about it, but I still can't wrap my head around it. They can't either. You know, like I said, we have 6 men in the truck plus the officer. You don't get that. The whole fire department showed up, and that's just for one truck. In New York City, when they fill out a box, that's 3 engines and 2 trucks. Okay, so there's 5 companies assigned to the box. So
you get do you get a heavy rescue on when they fill the box, or just a first alarm from there?
No rescue. The rescue I think the rescue signed automatically on the 3rd alarm or 2nd alarm, unless they're special call. There's certain areas. See, the rescue, like we would run in with Rescue 3 all the time. Rescue 3 was Manhattan and the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
If the fire was somewhere in their response area, then they would go on the box. But if it was not in their response area, they wouldn't go to maybe the 2nd alarm was transmitted, or the dispatcher sent them. You know, the chief required them, or the dispatcher would send, instead of another truck company, maybe send rescue.
How was that relationship between, especially you being a truck guy, and the rescue? Because I know there's always, I hate to say it, but there's no other way for me to use my verbiage except for the way I know it, like the big dick competition. So you got the ladder company, the truck company, and the heavy rescue. And both you guys are like, we're the freaking best, we do the best job on the fire ground. And again, I love both assignments. I've had the privilege to work on both trucks. In that time, was there a lot of competition between ladder or truck companies and rescues and squads, or did you guys work pretty well together?
No, well, I was in Manhattan. So the northern end of Manhattan is covered by Rescue 3, and the southern end of Manhattan, like below 96th Street, I see. I don't know if you understand the graphic there. So below 96, that's Rescue 1's response area. So we got along famously with Rescue 3 because a lot of those guys, Rescue 3 was more like a ghetto rescue. Because they did Manhattan and the Bronx, and same with Rescue 2 in Brooklyn, and Rescue 1 because it's Midtown. You know, to this day they probably still think they're
the prima donnas.
Yeah, the cat's meow. You know,
Yeah.
Well, let's face it. Whenever they go in Midtown, there's going to be 10 million people there with cameras. You know, everything's in Midtown. So anything that happens. Well, sometimes they get some pretty spectacular stuff down there. You know, like the subway works and all the high-rise buildings are in Manhattan, and so they get a lot of that type of work. And again, because it's in Midtown, they would strut around because everybody's taking their pictures and stuff like that. But this firefighting, we're all the same. We do the same work. But anyway, getting back to the rivalry, with Rescue 3, it was never a problem. I shouldn't say they knew their place. You got to remember, if they're coming in where we worked, they're coming in almost to do truck work. And in which case, that would mean, because we had mostly tenement fires, and so they would right away go right to the roof and help us open up the roof. But you got to remember, we were ready there 5 minutes before they get there, 10 minutes. So we would have the roof open, and they would come strolling up to the roof, and we'd kid around with them and say, "Take up, rescue, take up means."
Yeah, 5 minutes too late, boys, right? It's the good thing is in 1970 and 2026, it hasn't fucking changed, boss. So that healthy competition is so good. And I still enjoy, rubbing into somebody that either you beat them in their first due or you get the hole or whatever, be like, boys, what took so long, right? Hey, don't worry about it. You can just clean up our mess. We're good. Yeah.
Exactly. We'd kid around with them a lot. But you see, also Rescue 3, the captain from Rescue 3 happened to be an officer, and he was a lieutenant in 26 Truck. So we knew him. He knew us. A lot of the guys from the more senior guys wanted to work at Rescue for whatever reason, maybe to say they worked at Rescue 3. So they were up there. And we all knew one another. It was great. But with Rescue, there were some jobs when in the different response area of ours, when Rescue 1 would show up, what could they do? They can't open up the roof any more than we did. They would come up and Rescue 2 in Brooklyn, they would try and take the line from the engine guys over there. So there'd be big fights about taking the line. I know I knew guys in Rescue 2 also, and they would fight to get the line, but Rescue 1 they never would pull that crap with the engine companies there. It's always good rivalry, what can I tell you? After you do 20 years, you get to know all these guys. Anyway, as a matter of fact, one of our lieutenants became the captain of Rescue 2. Ray Downey, he happened to be, then he went from Rescue 2 to Chief of Rescue Services. Consequently, died in 9/11. So we had a lot of guys that had gone down to Rescue 2 for whatever reason. Maybe they thought it was more glamorous, but turns out we did more fire duty than them, and that's the reason why I didn't go to work there.
How did that transition work for you then when they disbanded your ladder truck? And did you get an option to go, like, at least put papers in somewhere, or they said, "Hey man, you're going engine 54"?
Oh no!
And then how was that transition going from the ladder or the truck back to the engine?
It was terrible, but like I say, the word was out that we'd be disbanded on a Wednesday, and then the department orders would come down, and it had the list of everybody's name and where they were going. So, there I was. Everybody else went to trucks, and I went to the engine. I knew 54 because they're Midtown. They're in the same quarters as Ladder 4, which is that's Times Square. So
Okay.
if you're going to be at any Midtown, I mean, that's a great company because you're right in Times Square. It's really cool. So I knew I was going to 54, and
Okay.
it was in with the truck, so it wasn't that bad. It was around December, though. I never forget. It was around Christmas time, and in the beginning, it was kind of cool because you go out on runs and people would be taking pictures of you, and the tourists, and but you had to behave yourself. You couldn't do stuff like we used to do in Harlem. You had to be more careful where you're going, and especially the fire. But I didn't go to that many calls. And then if there was a detail, if one company is short-handed, you'd get detail. So if the truck needed a guy, I would volunteer to work in the truck that night because the engine guys didn't want to work in the truck. So I would,
It's still like that today. You got guys that are specifically trucks, some guys engine, and then the other guys will swing. But I
yeah,
believe a lot of engine guys are like, man, no, I don't want to do the truck. I want to do a ladder.
right.
I'd rather stay on the wagon.
Well, because the truck was, there's certain jobs that
Mm.
if you don't do them, a guy from the engine certainly doesn't know how to do the job. So, you take a young kid from the engine and he's in a truck that night and they tell him you're on forcible entry. He doesn't have a forced door. The hell does he know how to force a door? They showed it to him during Proby School. So he doesn't know that. I don't blame him for not wanting to go to the truck. And then suppose
Yeah.
they wouldn't assign him, but God forbid they assign him to the roof and he's got to go up to the roof. He don't know what to do when he gets to the first one. He doesn't know how to even get up to the roof. So then let alone go up there and ventilate. So it's tricky when it came to that. As a matter of fact, the original captain from Ladder 26 was John O'Regan. I don't know. Do you guys do you ever hear of Ladders 3? Ladders 3 was the training bulletin for tenement fires, and they still use it to this day. It assigns each guy to a position and what to do and what not to do. We would go by that. Well, that was John O'Regan. He wrote it. He was the captain of 26 truck. Well, if some kid from the engine, if they would swap a tour one night, you work for me, I'll work for you. And the captain was working and the kid from the engine was coming over to the truck. The captain would say, you go back to the engine. He wouldn't take a guy from the engine there. And if he needed somebody, call a guy in from home, one of his guys, and make him work. I mean, he was a little paranoid when it came to that stuff. But it was fun. It was all good.
That's amazing. So how long were you on engine 54 till it was less than a year till you were able to transfer back to 26, right?
Maybe 6-7 months. I was, because there was a chief there. That particular house had a chief in quarters. Well, that chief that was in that in quarters, he was in my groups when I worked. He had been the captain of 31 truck, which is in the Bronx, which is one of the busiest companies also in the job at that time. And he knew exactly why I couldn't stand it down there. I said, Chief, you got to get me out of here.
Help me, Chief.
He said, I'll do what I could do. But he knew my attitude, so he was good like that. He knew I didn't want to be there. And, I just did my job. First of all, I wanted to be uptown where all the action was. It was hard even working down there because you couldn't go to work. You couldn't drive your car to work because there's no place to park. The only time you could really drive your car was on weekends. You could park. So I had to commute to go to work there. A lot of other things. I just didn't like, a lot of the calls they went on were nonsense calls. And I don't like that kind of stuff. So, but turns out my father had a business uptown, sort of like home goods. One day, a woman comes in shopping because it was a wholesale business, and she's shopping in the store and everything. And they get to talking. Turns out that she was the assistant fire commissioner. My father mentioned, hey, my son is a fireman and on and on. So she says, well, if he ever needs anything, let him contact me. So my father tells me the story. So sure enough, I contacted her. Some things I don't remember if I called her or however I got word to over to her, but I said, I really want to go back to 26 truck. She says, I could put you in any company and the whole entire job right now. And you really want to go back to 26? So I said, yeah. She said, okay, because she thought I was nuts. She she would have transferred me like where I'd be 2 miles from my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, no, I want to go back to 26. So sure enough, following week on the orders, I'm back at 26. And And that was the end of my stint downtown. Those days, you could thank you can't do it anymore, but I went out and bought um, she was Irish, so I bought a big bottle of Irish whiskey. I went down to headquarters, walked into the office, go to commissioner's office. I walked in, put it on the desk, and walked out. But you can't do that anymore. Now you
No, he'd be like, hey, thank you very much.
got arrested, but that was
So
fun.
75, you go back to the ladder, and you spend your entire career backstep on the ladder, correct? From there on out?
Well, you could call it back step, but after a while, I became the chauffeur. Chauffeur's
Okay.
the driver because I really didn't want to be, just wanted to, do all the other jobs. But the captain came to me and said, look, so and so's retiring. You're next in line because it goes by seniority. You're
Mm.
next in line. You're next in line for the seat. That's how it was called. And I said, I really don't want to. I really don't want to drive. If you don't take it, I'm going to give it to so and so. And I said, oh shit! There's no way in hell am I going to let him drive.
Drive me around.
Drive. So I said, all right, I'll have to take it because that one particular guy, he was there because he was there. And I said, no, I'm not going to let him drive. So I took over, and I drove. Maybe the last 5 years, I would think. I was the chauffeur. It could be, which is okay, I guess.
Well, I got a couple pictures before we kind of get into the stories of some of these pictures, though. What was your? I kind of feel like I know chauffeur is not the answer, just kind of how you responded to. What was your favorite position on the ladder or on the truck when you were assigned there? What was the spot there? I don't know if you guys did seat assignments or if it was just by seniority, but what was your favorite position when you're on that truck?
The best position, as far as I go, is the can man.
Okay.
Because no matter what you're going to, you, you're the first one in the door. The first one, if it's food on the stove, a mattress fire, or the place is fully involved, the can man, the irons man, and the officer are the ones first to enter that apartment. You're right there. So the can was the best because you get to use the can, And I mean, of course, if the place was wrong, there's not much you could do. Just spray around the door frame and keep the fire from going out in the hall till the engine got water. But once you went into the apartment, it was a mattress fire. You're the one that's you get first water on that fire on the mattress. And a lot of times, there's someone laying in there. So you spray the water and you drag the guy out into the hallway or the kitchen or whatever it is. So I used to love the can, but after a while, when I start getting older, it starts getting heavier and heavier and heavier. It's 2.5 gallons of water you're carrying with you. And sometimes you wore a mask on your back, sometimes you didn't. And so, all right, take the irons and then force the door. And again, when you force the door, you're also the first one down the hallway. So it was good. And then from there, I used to like the outside vent, the tiller man. Originally, it was a tiller rig. So you had to have someone drive the back. I used to love that too. That was a great position.
I always said unfortunately, in my department, we don't have tiller trucks. I wish we did. But I always said if we had a tiller, I would kind of going through the ranks already, I would promote to tillerman and I would stop and I would never leave that seat because my opinion, I think that's the best spot in the fire service, especially in today's fire service with a lot less staffing than you guys had back in the day and what they're running now. I feel like it's the best of both worlds because you get that initial action and adrenaline, dump right from the get go. And then as soon as you pull on scene, you're still going to work. You're still actively working. So that's freaking. You can tell you're a real fireman because immediately you're like, yeah, the can was the best spot, or the irons. I'm like, yes and yes. So I think you kind of gauge on how much they love the job from there. So there's a couple pictures you shared with me that I really want to talk about real quick. And the guys that can see, they'll look at it, and I'll try to explain for the ones that don't. So right where my cursor is, it looks like a news article. It says Daily News. That's you because I see your nose all day long, right, boss? and you got to grab right here. And it says, if I read that correctly, a young life saved. So if you don't mind kind of marching out that call right here, what kind of fire was it? Do you remember it? Were you on the ladder that day, on the engine? Can I give a recap to the audience on this grab right here, boss?
Okay. Funny that you should show that pictures right after we talk about being the tiller man. Okay. I remember it like it was yesterday, but I'll explain the whole thing. Try it from beginning to end. Make it quick. We pull up to the scene with second due truck. The first due truck is right in front of the building. We pulled up almost alongside them. I had the tiller that day. Again, getting back to the tiller seat. When you're in a tiller seat, when you're pulling into the street, you're looking up, you're sizing up the whole situation from that seat before you even get down. So you could see the fire. That particular fire was on the fourth floor. You see the fire, you see the smoke coming out of the fourth floor. You look around, you see they got the ladder up on the roof, all this kind of stuff. So my job when you come down off the tiller is to come around and ask the chauffeur if he's going to put the ladder up. If he's going to put the ladder up, I have to stay there and help him pull out the stabilizers. If he says no, I'm gone. Okay? And he says, no, I'm not putting up the ladder. I'm gone. Now my position, because the fire was in the front of the building, my position, according to ladder 3, is the front of the fire building, along with the chauffeur. Also, position is the front of the fire building. But I beat him to the fire escape, and that's my job, is to go up the front of the fire building and ventilate. And after you ventilate, you search. So you come off the rig. I'm coming around the front of the rig, and a guy comes out. I'm carrying a kid. It was the chief said carrying a kid, and he says, "There's another kid up there." He says it to me, and I go and climb up the fire escape. The drop ladder is already down, and I go up the ladder, the fire escape. I'm going up the fire escape, and he says, the kid's in that room, and now the smoke is billowing out of his room, and I didn't have a mask on or anything like that, and I says, well, I got to go in and get this kid, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? And I looked down the street, and the chief was down there, and I knew the chief was O'Regan. He was our old our ex-captain, and he was the one that wrote ladder 3, and he was one of his old. He had a chest full of medals too. And I'm thinking, well, if I don't go in that window, I'll never be the end of this, but I'll probably get fired. So smoke is blowing. I mean, this is all taking milliseconds. Okay, I got the tools with me, and I dropped the tools on the through the window. I can reach it and drop the tools on the floor. I climbed through the window, shine my flashlight, and I see this little reflection in the corner of the room. It was the kid's arm. I crawled in there, grabbed the kid. The dresser had fallen on top of him. And I just, again, it takes a split second. I take him and grabbed him. I don't even know how I got the dress. Maybe I pulled him out from under the dresser, flipped it up. Grabbed him back out through the window, down the fire escape. And then you see me. That picture shows me carrying a kid. I was going to looking around for the ambulance wasn't there yet. None of that stuff was there. And there was a cop car right there. I'm looking around. I saw the cop car. And I went over to the cop car, and he said, "We go to the hospital," which is right up the road, St. Luke's Hospital. A good hospital, by the way. I get in the back seat, and we were on the way to the hospital, and the cop car gets a flat tire, and he can hit up all the way to the hospital with a flat tire. It was funny. And I says, "Why don't you radio ahead and tell them that we're coming in, to the loading dock?" And sure enough, I don't think he radioed ahead or whatever, but when we pulled into the loading dock, they were all out there. And I gave the, kid to the nurses, and he says, let's go back to the fire. My tools are up there. I got to go get my tools. Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble. So he drives it. We drive back to the fire. He drives back with the flat tire. And we, it's maybe 15 minutes expire, we get back up there and I go up, now I go up the interior stairs to go get my gear. And the lieutenant, by the way, happened to be Ray Downey that day.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he says to me, well, where the fuck you been? I've been looking all over for you. I said, I said, long story, though. I'll tell you about it later. So it was funny. And, that was, it was all on a night's work. That's what we do.
Oh my God. I was going to ask you prior to that last little part, I'm like, did anybody even know you were gone? Like you come back, but it's like, where the hell were you? Like we've been looking for you.
And he said, where you been? I said, no, you're not going to believe this. So it was good. And then they wrote me up, so I got a medal from that.
That's an amazing. What year was that? Do you remember, boss?
I think it was 1974, something like that, 74, 75. Long time.
I want to show another picture real quick. I'll get back to this screen sharing here. Just because what Mike was saying before, like it's the fire service never changes. These guys were in the war years, so they had plenty of fire duty, but he sends me this picture, right? So Mike, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
All right, so for the guys that can't watch right now, it's the crew picture. We always say, hey, man, take the picture. And this big freaking sign behind them says, Lord, send more fire, exclamation mark. So the boys have never changed. We do the same thing now, and I freaking love that. It is an insatiable appetite where you run 3, 4, 5, 6 workers in a shift. It's never enough. You're like, hey, I hope we get number 8. Hey, I hope we get number 9, or all the way down to you're not running anything. You're just hoping for one. But it's what I'm trying to drive home is from the 70s to, 2026 now, it's still the same. It's still the same dudes. Like, this is how awesome this job is. But I love the fact that you have a crew picture in front of a huge billboard. Where is that? Is that like something that's spray painted, or was that a sign you guys made? What was that?
That was, believe it or not, that was in a church. We had a job in that church. Once we put it out, you hang around waiting to go home. And we saw that painted on the wall of the church. And I never, again, I should have done research. Why would Lord send more fire? What does that mean? But it was in a black church in Harlem. And we all, if you could see by the front pieces is the ladder company, engine company in there. And we all posed by that picture. And it was great. And again, it was
sure. Again, just so you see, he's talking about the front, right? So you see the 26s on the lids.
Yeah,
is this a 8 or a rescue on?
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, there's six guys at 26.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. So it was in the 70s.
Got a couple 8s in there. It looks like, right?
The 8s were an engine from an engine from Midtown, because 58 engine that night was, see, that's a whole topic we haven't discussed yet. After the companies did so many runs, they would swap them out. They would send them to a slower area, and the slow engine would come back up to Harlem. An 8 engine was downtown in the Times Square area. And they would come up, and 58 would go back downtown and give them the rest of the night, supposedly the rest of the night off, so they wouldn't be doing so many runs. But so 8 engine came up and was running that. So that's the reason for 8 engine. But see, in those days, it was crazy busy. Would do that with us too, the truck. If we did so many runs or so many jobs, they would send us downtown and then send the slower company back up to Harlem. most of the time, those slower comers didn't want to be up there. They hated it. I was very friendly with one of the dispatchers, always worked in our groups. I would just call him up. His name was Herbie Iser. I don't know if you know that name. It's out there. You look it up one of these days. Herbert, we got to go back up to we hang around in the slow firehouse, and then all of a sudden they get a job uptown, and the next thing you know, they 26, you'd be special called to respond to the fire. We go all the way back uptown again. We go to work, and that's what we used to do. But they would that went on throughout the city. They'd swap the busy companies out for the rest of the night.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I love the stories and everything else. So you stayed, you did your entire career. So you were right around what, 21 years when you retired,
Yeah,
Mike?
yeah.
So it sounds like you had an amazing career. So why'd you stop at 20? Why? I mean, I know some guys that, man, they do like 45 or something crazy where they're working probably yesterday for you at that point, you know?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One reason was I had my wife wasn't happy, and my mother or my mother-in-law about me going on the job to begin with. So
Really?
yeah, oh yeah. So I promised him at the time, well, I could retire after 20 years. So
Okay.
one promise I made. But then the second one was that hurt my back a million times, and I was getting hernias constantly. I had a good friend in the medical office or something. They says, after 20 years, you should put in for disability. You might get it. So that's another reason. So I was able to get a disability and go out on a disability. And
Good deal. What'd you do after then?
million things. Getting back to retiring at 21, looking back now, knowing what I know, I could have stayed on for 20 more years just doing light duty. There's so many great light duty jobs out there. There was a while when, after hernia, they don't let you go back for 6 weeks. So with light duty job was driving the doctor. So I would drive the doctor around. That's one job you could do forever, and you could work at headquarters. They have what they call a mass service unit. These guys take care of all the mass. New York City they have 2 trucks that go just filling up the tanks, and there'll be fire. So I could have been a fire marshal. I turned that down.
Oh.
Like a jerk, because a fire marshal gets lieutenant's pay. And, I don't have to tell you, that would have been some job. Once you become a fire marshal, when you retire from being a fire marshal, you go to work for an insurance company. But all these things you learn about later on, and looking back, who knows? And then the other side of the coin, if I stayed, I could have been a 9/11. I could have been not even talking to you. So
Yeah, I was just saying, that's the first thing that I thought of. I'm like, if you did stay on one of those light duty jobs, you probably would have been right there at the towers at the point. And again, we would have never talked in conversation. So things work out for a reason, I feel like sometimes too.
Yeah. So guys that were killed, 9/11, way past their retirement age, and they stayed on, and what to get them.
Yeah, that's you. You came on in '69 and then all the way to the early '90s. When you first came on, because you had talked a couple times throughout some of these calls, like that rescue you were talking about, that quick grab of that kid. You're like, crap, I don't have a mask. Like, at what point did they implement masks? When you got on, was there a mask on any of the rigs, or did that come after you were on the job?
No, we had masks.
Oh, you did? Okay, you just didn't wear them.
Oh yeah, we just didn't put them on.
Okay.
No, we had them from day one.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you didn't even have them yet, and you started transitioning into them.
No. When you come down off the tiller, there's a cabinet. The mask was in the cabinet, one of the cabinets. Each guy has a mask. Even the chauffeur, believe it or not, there's a mask for him. But
Wow.
certain positions you just didn't take it. It's like the OV. What am I going to do with a mask on a fire escape? It's just getting in my way.
I got you.
On the roof, it's the same story. It's just getting in my way. Of course, once you vent the window and the edge is getting water, you got to climb in and go. But you know, uh, uh, you just have to breathe a little smoke for a little while. The irons man and the cam man, they might take the mask. Depends if the officer takes it, then you take it. If he gives you a dirty look, okay, you know, if he could do it. When we first, when I was first assigned to the truck, and you'd look to the lieutenant, and I go to put on a mask, and the lieutenant says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Put on my mask." He said, "Put it back." And you had to follow him in there. And boy, in those days, those guys are hardcore, and you learn how to take a fee pretty quick.
I'm assuming you're senior fireman and probably your lieutenants at that point. They might have been what, World War II vets?
Yeah, they were two of my lieutenants was firefighters in 26 truck. So they were around. I mean, these guys, there's no one more experienced than these guys. They had been a million fires. So it was great. I used to love to work with them because you know you're never going to get hurt, and you know you're going to do the job the right way. It was great working with these guys because you just keep your mouth shut and do your work.
What was the culture like in FDNY back in the day with those senior guys that were, like you said, you follow them because they know exactly what they're doing. Afterwards, would they ever grab you and be like, "Hey kid," like, and
Yeah,
kind of coach you up a little bit? Was that their
yeah.
culture, or was it okay?
No, they would when you get back and after you clean all the equipment up and you go into the kitchen. It might have been, even if you're walking back, one of the guys will say, "Why did you do this?" And you say, "Well, next time you got to do this." And okay, he would tell you, one of the firemen, the officer might say the same thing. "What took you so long to get the window?" And I'd say, "How you know?" "Well, now I knew." He was at the front door and he would hear the glass break. He could hear the back window busted. So I had to tell him, took me a little longer to get up the fire escape. As long as you told him what took so long. He said, "Okay," because, a lot of times you just don't go in the back of the building and go up the fire escape because there's all kinds of crap back there. There's flower pots out there. They hang their laundry back there. There's bars on the windows. There's a million things that's on those fire escapes. So sometimes it takes longer than others. But and then we'd go in the kitchen and I'll sit down and we talked about it. And what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And do you think we could have done it better? And it worked out good because, and sometimes as I got older on the job, and the younger guys would they would come over and say, "I did this. Did I do the right thing?" And I said, "Well, you should have done this, but whatever you did was okay. But next time, do it this way." So it was great that the younger kids could come over and ask questions like that. And there's 3 or 4 guys that come to mind right now that when they came to the truck, they'd ask me all kinds of questions. All became chiefs. They
There
became
you
chiefs.
go.
And I stayed firefighter, but it's good. It's all good.
Well, you're saying like even your Proby class, you had two guys end up becoming fire commissioners. I know my initial Proby class back east, one of the recruits out there came back to left that department to take a battalion chief job, I think in a smaller department somewhere else, and then
Uh,
she came back as the chief of that department several years later, and I'm going, man, I was in the academy with them and they're the chief and like I'm a
yeah.
captain. Yeah. So it's like, man, our career paths took definitely to different realms. Like, what did I do wrong? Kind of, in the mix. But
Well, see, that's what was happening as time evolved, like when I went on. Vietnam was going on at the time. So a
mm,
lot, okay. Um, so a lot of the guys that come on the job then were Vietnam vets. But then once Vietnam cooled down, all these guys come on the job were college kids,
mm,
that And they were, then I think one of the requirements was they had to take a fire science course in college or something. So they're all brainy kids. That's why they all became lieutenants and captains and chiefs, because they're all smart guys. It was crazy. I got a list there. I mean, I know you can't see it that well. Can you see? Oh, you can see it a little, right? All
A little
those
bit, yeah.
all these names, all these guys, all which is, it could be maybe 100 names on here from our firehouse, all from lieutenants all the way up to fire commissioners. All those guys I worked with. So it was crazy. And what was nuts is all those fires that we were going to, they still had time to study. And all got promoted, except for me.
Did you ever take a promotional exam, or you wanted to stay a fireman your entire career?
I took the test once. I took the test. Of course, I failed it because I couldn't study. I'm not a student. And then the next time they had a test, I said, I'd rather take the overtime instead. Like a jumper. I took the overtime instead of the test. But had I taken the test and become a lieutenant, I would, it's automatic 10-15% raise right off the bat. But then once you get promoted, then you got to go get transferred. And so if you're in a busy house and you get promoted, they'd like to put you in a slower house, or maybe the reason is maybe teach them, your knowledge, you're going to you get transferred to a slower area of the city, and you, most of these guys, when they get promoted, they don't want to go down there. They want to come back up. And it depends who you knew, but at that time I knew everybody, so I could come back right up if I wanted to. I knew the commissioner, so it was great. That's what it is. And now I look back as, wow, if I was retired with lieutenants or captain's pay, I'd be living like a king,
Well, you're still doing pretty good for sure.
Yeah.
Fire service, amazing career. I know I've had you on for a little while now, so I want to respect your time also. We didn't get a chance to cover it. So before we kind of get transitioned to the questions for the end of the episode, we never really covered the why. So you alluded to your wife and your mother-in-law did not want you to be a fireman. So why? So why did Mike decide, hey, this is what I want to do for at least the next 20 years of my life?
It was wanted to be a fireman from as far back as I can remember. A little kid, I used to hit a fire engine. We lived in the suburbs, and the fire whistle would go off in the firehouse. It was a call for a fire. And a lot of times when the fire engines would come down the main road past my house, I would run outside and get my bike and chase after them. And so from that, little kid to when I was a big kid, that's what I wanted to do. And of course, how many wives and mothers really want their sons or husbands, to be a firefighter? In those days, it wasn't that glamorous as it is today. Now they're making big bucks. So it's 9/11 had a lot to do with it too. We got a lot more respect after 9/11. It's a shame that all those guys had to die just for us to get respect, but it happened.
Now, unfortunately, there's so many positives that came out of the worst event ever in the American fire, service history. But yeah, I think that opened a lot of guys' or the public's eyes to exactly what the American Fire Service does as a whole, and then especially what New York City did that day. So, what a again, like I said, amazing career you had. I love the pictures you shared. They're freaking awesome. I feel like everyone that we've ever had on this show, it's a 50-50. They either were like you, Mike, right from a little kid, I've always wanted to do this job, or they accidentally found it later in life and then figured out this is what they were meant to do in life. And I think that's what's so special about this profession and the traditions that we have, because once the right person finds this, it is a true call and it's not a job. And it's the best thing in the world. And half of that is because of who we get to work with, the guys and gals on the job, the crew, and all the banter that we get to go through. So we talked about the why. We got a bunch of great stories. New York City is steeped in tradition. You want to be a fireman ever since you're a little kid. You're a volunteer to start your career off. So, what is your favorite American fire service tradition? But more importantly, why? Why did you love this tradition so much, sir?
Well, I guess the greatest tradition is the brotherhood. I mean, we do a lot of traveling, outside this country, in the country, of course, but outside, and no matter where you go, no matter where you are in the world, you could always get a cup of coffee. You could any fire station you go to, I don't care if it's in Japan or in Alaska or Germany or any place. You walk in a firehouse and you say, "Hi, I was a firefighter. Come in and you want a cup of coffee." The first thing they always say is, "You want a cup of coffee?" And you can't find out. I don't think you can find out with any other job. And aside from a cup of coffee, you can always get a parking space.
And that's probably a really big deal in big cities too, not so much in the
We were
suburbs.
once in New Orleans, and we were driving around for hours, and I finally said to my wife, "I hate to do it, but I'm going to do it." We drive up, I park on the ramp. I said, "Look, I need a parking space." The guy says, "Put it over there, right in front of the firehouse." And I said, "Here's my keys. If you got to move it, move it." I mean, it was mind-boggling. So that's one of the perks of this job. And the brother is, as you well know, there's no other brother. And if there is, I'd like to know it.
Yeah, and we've talked about it on multiple episodes, especially the brotherhood and the bond that we all have across the country. It's absolutely amazing. And like you said, there's no other job I know of either. They can literally knock on whatever profession it is, and they'll gladly invite you in, and then you can start, trading stories and everything else. That's how I got in contact with you because I
Yeah.
ran into a couple captains in Goodyear, and they're like, "Hey, have you ever talked to Mike before? He's the old salty dog from FDNY." I'm like, "Tell me more." Right. And they're like, "Yeah, he shows up and we throw him in the back of the Chiefs buggy and we just drive him around, just talk shop and everything else." And I'm like, that's amazing. No, I don't. I'm like, "Please give me your phone number." And we started talking from there. I love that part of the job is the brotherhood, like you said, and the bond that we have. The only people I know that's even close is probably the military, but they don't have it for 20 to 45 freaking years in a row. They'll have that super close bond time of war, where they have to. But it's that prolonged bond that we have with the boys. It's absolutely amazing. And like you said, I love being able to talk shop with guys that, back east, middle America, wherever, then they end up somewhere. And we just, there's so many differences between New York City, California, Arizona, wherever you put it. But with all that said, the similarities even outpower that. And most of it is the attitude of the people on the job from the 70s or late 60s all the way up to right now. Yeah, they're different, but it's still the same breed of people. Society has changed, but the breed hasn't changed. And I think that's one of the most amazing things in the world. I love brotherhood as a tradition. The last portion I want to get to is my favorite question. So you're a backstep guy. We already talked about taking the test. Well, I'm just going to magically promote you. You are fire commissioner of the world, fire chief of the universe. But you get that one wish, that genie, right? It's instant gratification, zero sweat equity. You get to change something in the American Fire Service and it happens right now. What would that be? But more importantly, why? Why are you changing? That's either adding, deleting, whatever you want to do. It's your show and it happens right now, boss. What would it be?
Change?
Yeah, add whatever you want.
That's a tough question. I've been thinking about that a lot. Camaraderie. Yeah, again, the camaraderie and the brotherhood. Let's keep it the same. It probably is the same. I notice it wherever we go. And I can't change. We had discussed this before. Before I can't change the way things are done because East Coast firefighting is way different than what's going on out here. There's no way you could change it because you can't make it all the same because it's not done. I mean, with all these forest fires, wildfires, I'd be like a
Like a
deer
fish out of water, right?
Yeah, fish out of water. Give me a 7-story tenement fire. I know what I'm doing. But when
Yeah.
it's right, I mean, I'm a pro. That's what I do. That's what I did. But pull up and fire one of these brush fires, I go out of my mind. And even well, the 1-story houses that you have out here in Goodyear and stuff like that. I did that in the valleys, so I know all about that. But uh, we didn't talk about it, of course. But I sit with Goodyear guys constantly. We talk, and talk, and talk, and and they just can't fight. They can't fight even these 1-story house fires like we do back east because there's the manpower. There's just no manpower, and by the time they get the manpower, it's too late. If the manpower's not there within 5 minutes, something's going to happen. So it's tough. I don't know how you could make it all the same. You said the buildings there are they don't have tenements. You have those row homes, those row
Mhm.
frame. So that's a different ball game right there. Florida's the same, the same. They have the ghetto areas, but they're also short buildings. California, I drive. When you go, I look at these things, and it's different no matter where you go in this country. Canada is the same stuff. They get different areas, so it's hard. These warehouses, that's the newest thing now. The warehouses now, they're going to be data centers. You notice when they catch fire now, the ones that had they burn down, million square feet, sprinkled and everything, they still burn down, right? So why are they putting sprinkler systems? Might as well save the pipes and save the water because they're going to burn down anyway. The fire overwhelms the system, so something's wrong. I can't change it. I mean, who's going to listen to me? But
It's a building construction thing. I mean, because you live out here now, the area that you live in is not old. You're
no,
talking 90s, early 2000s. It became in existence compared to where you
yeah,
came from, where buildings are 1920s, 1800s. It's
yeah,
completely different materials, different building codes, and they're just
yeah,
getting worse and worse and worse as time's going on. Where they're doing podiums now, so something that would be considered a high rise and have to have those built-in protection systems are not in place because they build them on 2 slabs of concrete called a podium, and they can use lightweight construction for the rest. So it's a
yeah,
freaking house construction, but it's 9+ stories high and
yeah,
with zero built-in system protections. It's
yeah.
crazy. It's just different now.
It's that. And evidently, I mean, the reason why Goodyear hasn't turned into Phoenix yet because it's new. The
Mhm.
communities, but another 25 years, things are going to be changing on it. They're going to be running their asses off, putting all these fires out because all this
Okay.
stuff, and hopefully to get the manpower. But it's not just Goodyear. It's all most of the country is 2, 3 men on a rig.
Yeah. And it's funny. I feel like outside of the big cities, that's pretty much a common. We had a guy from Chicago on here, and they have the same attitude. Chicago has the same mindset as New York City does. We
Yeah,
will we will outdo this fire with manpower. We will throw manpower on top of manpower until the fire goes out. Period. The end. That we
yeah,
will overwhelm the fire with manpower. We don't have that option. We have a really good system here, but man, you go middle America, it's non-existent. You might have companies 10+ minutes from each other. Insane in today's, modern day lightweight construction. It's going to be game over for those guys. They can't fight fire the same way they did when you guys did in the 60s and the 70s. And even they still do over there because the age of the construction is pretty much similar outside the new builds.
yeah. I mean, you know, we have a first alarm, and now they got all these different signals. But first alarm, high rise, they call it 1066, I believe they call it. They could throw 30 companies in there within 20 minutes. You can't get 30 companies here in hours. So, and after the first 10 minutes, you don't even need them anymore. Oh, what are you going to do with them? I show them pictures. I always bring my pictures down and I show the guys. I show them pictures of a fire tent with this 5 ladders going up. Okay, 5 ladders. You don't have that in between Phoenix and the whole area. There's not 5 ladder company. And now they got these, what do they call them, quints,
Mm,
quads. Okay.
Quince. Yeah.
Once they committed to an engine, the ladder, my says, what are you going to do with the ladder? I tell them, well, we discuss it. We don't argue. I says, once you commit that engine, that ladder is useless. Why do you even buy it? So, they always have an excuse. But
Nope. I agree with you 100%. I know the majority excuse from the uppers is going to be, ratings when everything has water coming out the door or whatever. And I get that side. I also came from a system that went to Quince prior to my arrival. Then we were transitioning away from them because exactly what you said, realized they were garbage. We're running them up and down the street all day, every day, and they're breaking because they're carrying everything that a freaking truck company has to have and everything that a freaking engine company has to have. And
with
they're
the
slow as
water,
crap. Yeah, they can't move anything. And then you're right. Once you commit that as the attack pumper, you just wasted a freaking ladder company, and it's not even a very good pumper. So it's what are we doing? It's like let the engines do engine work, let the truck do truck work.
yeah.
Here at the end, we have an abundance of engines. We don't have enough trucks ever.
No.
So
Well,
keep the trucks as trucks.
if they got the trucks, they wouldn't have the manpower to use a ladder. So it's a shame. It's a sin. It's a sin. I mean, I'm in Goodyear. You know that. The other day, something they had a call. The ladder was out of commission or whatever. The next truck was to Avondale.
Mhm.
By the time
10
Avondale,
minutes. Yeah.
forget about it. Go home. We don't need you. So, but we discussed it also. It's again the manpower they need. Even if they put ground ladders up, you need two men to put a ground ladder up.
Yeah.
Go,
It's
go,
silly.
yeah. So they don't even have the manpower for that. So and there's no way they could convince the government to get more manpower because they're not going to do it. So it, you teach you got a tough job ahead of you, especially trying to convince them to these things because it's not going to happen. It's a
Yeah.
shame.
So the only avenue we're progressively attacking right now, because it's the only option, is we need to become as most efficient on the fire gun as possible. Like exactly what you just said. Prior to a couple years ago, here in the valley, there was a two-man to throw a freaking ladder, right? And that's gone now. Single man, 24s, 28s, all day, every day. And that's what's pushed by us because there was no reason to. It was just something that used to always be done, and no one decided to change it. We're not increasing manpower, but we're increasing our call volume. So if we're not going to get more guys, what can we do? We can teach our guys to be able to do more work by themselves is the only answer right now. And that's what myself as a fire instructor, that is my ultimate goal for the next 15 years, the tail end of my career, is to make sure that these guys and gals that are entering the fire service now can do more than I ever could by myself initially, because they're going to have to do more work. The calls are only going to increase. Like you're saying, buildings are only getting older, and then add in all this stored, especially in our state in Arizona, stored energy and solar panels,
Yeah,
right? And you have batteries and thermal runaway. We're going to have more house fires here in the near future than we've ever had,
it's a
just
man.
because of all the technology. Yeah,
We have a big disaster at one of these data centers. It's just a matter of time.
100%.
It's not good. It's not good. And again, you're a training officer. You could train, and we discuss this all the time over here. You could train these kids till till the cows come home. You train, train, train. Unless you have the experience, unless you do it, all the training is nothing. I mean, you could teach them all day long how to stretch a line, but when you go to a fire and it's smoky and it's hot in there, the whole scenario changes. Wow, this is not what we practice at fire school, So, and they had a job here not long ago on the movie theater in town. They threw a ladder up to the roof. The guy climbed the ladder and something happened. He fell down. I mean,
Hmm.
they're not used to climbing up these ladders and going on these roofs. And you could drill all the time you want, but unless you do it over and over and over again and again, you're constantly switching the guys around. There's 6 months in an engine, then 6 months in the truck, and then they put them in hazmat over here, and then they put them back on the ambulance, and they do 6 months on the ambulance, and they blow their brains out doing those stupid medical calls all day long. And then, so how are you going to be a firefighter? You forgot what you did, and then okay. Thank God for Goodyear anyway. They get 90% of garage fires because of stupid garages, the golf carts, right? But eventually the houses, they're going to get old and they're going to start getting up. So what can I tell you?
Yeah, no, and you're right, and that's a problem of the system being broken right now, and it's not the guys' fault. It's just the system. Exactly
Yeah,
what you're saying. They don't have enough. They don't get enough experience. And you said you could train till you're blue in the face. Training is 100% absolutely necessary for all aspects of this job, but nothing trumps experience and actually doing the work. Because every single fire, and I know Mike knows this, every single fire is never perfect. So you learn something and get better every
every,
single job.
every fire. I mean,
Every fire, yeah. So you get better. And if you don't get enough jobs, it's hard to get better, right? It's hard to get to the point where you're feeling like a proficient fireman.
you know, fortunately for me, we had so many fires. I learned pretty quick. Within 5 years, I was pretty damn good. We know what we were doing. But
Yeah, I heard old timer say once, he said that, it was, you're only as good as your last fire. He goes, the benefit of, and he was old timer back east. He's like, our benefit was, he's like, if I didn't do good on a job, he's like, I got another one within a couple hours. So it was okay. And I could redeem myself. He's like, these kids now, they might not do good on a job and they'll get another one for maybe a month,
yeah,
He's like, so they got to ride that for a month. He's like, it's harder for those new guys now.
yeah. So I don't know. I don't know the answer.
That's all right. Let's just say protect. Let's just say protect what we do have and protect that brotherhood
Yeah.
so it doesn't become infiltrated by society and what everyone else believes the fire service should be. We know what the fire service should be and needs to be able to do our job and keep our guys coming through and the future, of the American Fire Service running. So, well, with everything, Mike, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your stories and your pictures. It was amazing. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off, my brother?
Nah, I don't think so. They probably got enough.
I love it. Why you're like, nah, I'm good, right?
I'll be glad to come on again, and we got a lot to talk about. We didn't cover a lot of stuff.
Exactly. So we'll get Mike back on the show. We'll tell a bunch more stories, and I'm glad you guys listened through. Hopefully, you learned something. If you didn't take anything away from this, let me just recap what I took away real quick. The American Fire Service in the freaking late 60s all the way up to today, it's still the same, right? Respect the fact that we have a job that was steeped in tradition and love for the brotherhood. It was up to us to maintain that. Leave your egos outside the firehouse, and it's amazing what we can accomplish as a whole. So, love you guys for listening. Please stay tuned for the next. Leave a review. It helps drive the podcast. And Mike, thank you so much, my brother. And we'll catch you for part 2 in the near future.
Anytime.